Donald Trump is shaking things up again, and this time he's targeting Canada. His latest push to rewrite the rules of trade is creating serious waves, threatening to disrupt a decades-old economic partnership. For years, the US and Canada have been like business partners, depending on each other, with industries like cars, steel, and aluminum flowing seamlessly between the two countries. Just last year, trade between them reached an astonishing $900 billion, with Canada exporting around $350 billion worth of goods to the US, including most of its vehicles. But now, things are getting tense. Canadians are questioning whether they are still allies, with some even suggesting it's time to strengthen ties with Europe instead. Trump has thrown a grenade into the mix by threatening to impose a 100% tariff on Canadian-made vehicles and metals, a direct hit to Canada's economy. The US buys over 2 million Canadian-made cars every year, along with steel and aluminum used in everything from skyscrapers to soda cans. Canada isn't backing down, though, and is preparing for a counterattack. If Trump wants a fight, Canada is ready, with one official stating they won't take it lying down. The retaliation has been targeted and personal, with one Canadian lawmaker proposing a 100% tax on Teslas, the electric car company led by Elon Musk, a close ally of Trump. Another politician suggested that if Trump continues, every Tesla entering Canada will face a massive tax. Tesla is seen as a strategic target in this trade war, not just because it's a symbol of American business success, but also because it's deeply invested in Canada's supply chain. Tesla sells tens of thousands of cars in Canada each year, and the company has agreements to source essential materials like lithium and nickel from Canadian suppliers for its EV batteries. If Canada imposes a 100% tariff on Teslas, it would double the price of a $50,000 Model Y, turning it into a luxury item out of reach for most buyers, a huge blow to Tesla's expansion in North America. Beyond that, Tesla relies on Canada's mineral reserves, and if Canada cuts off access to those resources, Tesla's battery production strategy could face chaos. Elon Musk himself has called Canada a game changer for Tesla's supply chain, but this advantage could turn into a liability if Canada decides to retaliate. A senior Canadian official made the country's position clear. Tax our cars, fine, but we'll cut off your battery metals and sell them elsewhere, maybe to Europe or China. Canada is one of the world's top producers of nickel, lithium, and cobalt, all crucial for EV batteries. Without these materials, Tesla could face higher costs and production delays. But the big question is whether Canada can afford to shift its trade focus from the US to Europe. On the surface, it sounds risky. The US is not only Canada's biggest trading partner, but also its most convenient, sharing a 5,500-mile border. That makes trade smooth and cost-effective. For example, car parts made in Ontario can be in Detroit within hours. Nearly 75% of Canada's exports, worth around $450 billion a year, go to the US, and replacing that with Europe could be a logistical nightmare. Shipping to Europe is expensive and slow. A container heading from Halifax to Rodham takes 2 weeks, far longer than a quick truck trip to New York or Michigan, and costs thousands of dollars more per shipment. Then there's the competition. Europe already has its own car giants like Volkswagen, BMW, and Renault, and they aren't exactly waiting for Canadian imports when they have plenty of homegrown options. The same goes for metals, as European manufacturers already source many materials from places like Norway and Russia. However, this doesn't mean Canada is out of options. In 2017, Canada signed a major trade deal with the European Union called the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA. This deal has already eliminated 98% of tariffs on Canadian goods entering the EU, making trade much easier. Since it took effect, Canadian exports to Europe have jumped by 30%, and in 2024 alone, trade between the two hit $60 billion. Unlike the US, which is moving toward protectionist policies like tariffs, Europe is an open and stable market with 450 million consumers, making it an appealing alternative for Canada. Canadian officials are signaling they aren't afraid to pivot, with local media hyping up the possibility, even declaring, "We're not trapped, Plan B is in place." The message is clear. Canada isn't going to sit back and take a hit if Trump wants to escalate the trade war. If that means turning to Europe instead of the US, the groundwork has already been laid. European leaders are taking notice, with some calling Canada's trade strategy a welcome alternative to Trump's aggressive tariff tactics. For example, since Canada signed its trade agreement with the EU, more than 1 million tons of Canadian steel have flowed into Europe, and plans for green steel projects are gaining traction. The EU is pushing for low-carbon production, and Canada's rich mineral resources could be key to making it happen. But while Europe presents new opportunities, it's not an easy fix. Switching from the US to the EU isn't as simple as flipping a switch. For one, shipping costs to Europe are 3 times higher than sending goods to Chicago. There are also regulatory hurdles, as many Canadian car parts would need modifications to meet European standards. Furthermore, competition is stiff, with steel giants in Poland and Sweden, and a strong auto industry in Spain. Canadian goods won't just slide in without a fight. Even so, Canada is playing the long game. The real trump card is its minerals. Europe's electric vehicle industry is hungry for lithium, cobalt, and nickel, all essential for battery production. And Canada has massive reserves of these minerals, especially in Quebec's James Bay region. With tariff-free access through the trade deal, Canada has a compelling case. A trade expert in Ottawa explained, "We're not turning our backs on the US, but we want them to know we have options. Europe is our safety net." And that's why Tesla is right in the middle of this economic showdown. Tesla isn't just a symbol of American innovation. It's also heavily tied to Canada, which has supplied raw materials to Tesla for years and is a major buyer of its electric cars. If a 100% tariff hits, the impact would be brutal. A Tesla dealership in Toronto could have cars stacking up because no one can afford them, and a $50,000 Model Y could suddenly cost $100,000, pricing most Canadians out of the market. Meanwhile, Tesla's US factories, like the one in Michigan, could find themselves scrambling for nickel that's now being shipped to Germany instead. The fallout wouldn't stop with Tesla. The entire North American auto sector depends on seamless trade between Canada, the US, and Mexico under the USMCA, the new NAFTA. Steel, aluminum, and car parts move freely across borders every day. Canada exports $15 billion in auto parts to the US annually, feeding factories in places like Ohio and Tennessee, and Mexico builds 3 million cars a year, many using Canadian steel. Ford, GM, and Chrysler all rely on these supply chains to keep costs down. A 100% tariff would throw this system into chaos.